living longer, living healthier, living better than ever before. Welcome to Mountain Pacific's Healthy Living for Life, a weekly series that gives you the information, education, and expert insight you need to become an active participant in today's ever-changing healthcare climate. Here now is today's program host.
The surest way to combat COVID-19 is with a vaccination. And although there are many more vaccines available to the general public right now, there are still some concerns and some questions. So what do we really need to know about the vaccine? Welcome to Healthy Living for Life, a show dedicated to helping you do just that. I'm Sarah Medley, your host. We're going to be hearing from two experts about the COVID vaccine and some myths, and someone who's had the vaccine. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Healthy Living for Life, and joining us today, Dr. Greg Holzman, State Medical Officer, and Drenda Neiman, who is the Health Officer with Lewis and Clark Public Health. Thank you both so much for being here with us today. I know you're both very busy. So Dr. Holzman, let's start with you. Let's talk about some general information about the vaccine. Talk about what vaccines are available right now and the difference in the dosing.
Sure. At this point in time, we have 3 vaccines that have emergency use authorization in the United States. The Pfizer vaccine, which is a 2-dose vaccine. Then there is the Moderna vaccine, which is also a 2-dose vaccine. And then just recently, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was released, and that is a 1-shot vaccine at this point in time. So those are what's available. There are a few more that are in the tracks to come through the FDA. We might see the AstraZeneca vaccine next to play into that.
So Dr. Holzman, let's stick with you. We know there's a difference between how the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is made compared to Pfizer and Moderna, for example. Can you talk about those differences for us, how they're made and how they work?
Sure. Really, one vaccine, the Johnson & Johnson, is almost just a step before the others. So what these vaccines, let's start with the Pfizer and Moderna, because they're very similar technology, is they take mRNA materials and they put it into a lipid capsule, and it's injected into you and taken into the cell. mRNA is what actually is used to build proteins within your cells. So the mRNA will build those proteins that when you see the coronavirus picture all the time with all the little spikes on it, which is why it's called corona as a crown, it builds those type of spikes and then releases it, which starts your antibody response, your immune response. And that's how that one works. It's never goes into your nucleus, doesn't get close to your DNA material, and it's an RNA. We are DNA people, and with that, the DNA breaks apart usually, and it makes its own messenger RNA, which then is released out and then goes through the same process. So what the Johnson & Johnson vaccine does is it is actually an adenovirus built within an adenovirus, which is something that would often cause the common cold. But it's deactivated, and then it's also taken out so it can't replicate. And it has some of that genetic material to build those proteins within that virus, the adenovirus, and it's injected in, goes in, and then it does basically the same thing. It's just one step further. It breaks apart. It makes the cell develop its own mRNA, and then from there, it's the same process that goes out there. The adeno kind of virus technology has been used before. We use it in the Ebola vaccine. The other two are newer vaccine that have been put out, but have been in development and working in different things for quite a long time.
So that's fascinating. Thank you. So why is the Johnson & Johnson vaccine a 1-dose, whereas Pfizer, Moderna 2?
It's the studies on how they were done. And so I can't really give you a specific answer on where that has come about. I can tell you that the idea with the Pfizer and the Moderna is that first shot is what we call a primer, gets your immune system primed up. And then when you give the second shot 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later, depending on the vaccine, that's your booster shot. And it increases your immunity response and it increases the longevity. So it works much better. The Johnson & Johnson one is been tested with one vaccine, and one of the things that's been really interesting so far is the efficacy seems to have been going up in time. So we often look at 2 weeks to say, what's your immune response by then and what kind of effectiveness this has. But we've seen this has better effectiveness at 4 weeks and kind of following this forward. The reason I say I don't know why one is chosen that way and one is chosen the other way is because the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is made similar, the same kind of concept as the Johnson & Johnson, they're looking at 2 shots. So we'll see how this goes. We'll be following a lot of this. We have the studies that go on, and then we have what we call the post-vaccination evaluation. So there may be a booster later with the Johnson & Johnson. There might not be. We might need to see boosters because of variants in these different things. So all that's still out there a little bit more. One of the things, if I can go on for one more second,
Sure.
that is really pretty cool on this is this technology allows us to move so much faster when there's changes in viruses. So we can get a new vaccine out much, much quicker than what we have with the flu vaccine, where we're following what's going on in the Southern Hemisphere, make a decision on what vaccine we're going to make for that year. Because of that, grow it in eggs, which takes a long time. And then by the time the virus gets up here from the Southern Hemisphere, it might be different and we find the vaccine is not as effective as we'd like it. This one, we can move much, the mRNA ones can update it a lot quicker. So I think this is a technology you're going to see quite a bit more of.
Exciting news.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to switch now to Drenda, and certainly Dr. Holzman, you can add in too. But so Drenda, if I have a choice between the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and either Pfizer or Moderna, can I make a choice, or could you recommend one over the other?
That's an excellent question, and I can speak for Lewis and Clark County and then try to give you an answer that's a little bit more statewide. But here in Lewis and Clark County this week, we were able to do Johnson & Johnson on a Monday, and then the Pfizer was given on a Tuesday and Wednesday. So when our registration opened, individuals were able to choose to register for the clinic on Monday, getting the Johnson & Johnson, or the clinic on Tuesday or Wednesday, getting the Pfizer. I can't say that is set up the same way in every county. Every county is really working through the details and doing the very best they can to just get the vaccine out to people as quickly as possible. So bottom line, it doesn't matter. Get the vaccine that's available to you when you're eligible to get it, regardless of what the vaccine is. We want to get the best protection in the county that we can. And the way to do that is to make sure that the majority of our residents are vaccinated, regardless of the vaccine.
Well, that is fantastic information. We need to take a break right now, but I am so looking forward to coming back where we can talk more about vaccination news. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Healthy Living for Life. Joining me today, Drenda Neiman and Dr. Greg Holzman, and we're going to continue talking about COVID vaccination and a few myths. But before we do that, I've got a question for you both, and I'm going to start with you, Drenda, first. So, Drenda, you've been leading the public health efforts in a county, and I'd like to know what has been the most difficult part of that job for you.
Sure. I think that what's been really difficult from my perspective is going from being the wizard behind the curtain to having the spotlight on public health. So, if you think back to other public health responses and emergencies that we've dealt with in the past, whether it's Ebola or Zika or H1N1, public health took the lead and things were handled very quickly, and then when we were able to move on quickly. In the case of a global pandemic, of which we have not seen anything like this in 100 years, public health was really kind of thrown into the spotlight, which we're not used to being there, first of all. And then additionally, I think having to really balance the politics of the situation. It's not just public health that is happening, it's the politics as well. And having to balance what the activities or the mitigation strategies that we choose in public health and have to do in order to protect the public, those have a real significant impact on people's lives, the economy, mental health, social emotional impacts. And so all of that has just been so amplified, and honestly, our public health department here in Lewis and Clark County has really done very little public health work since the onset of the pandemic, which means that a lot of the other things that we care very much about and are so important to keep our public healthy have set on the back burner. And that's been a real challenge for us.
You know, that's a really good point, is all the things that are not being taken care of. So, Dr. Holzman, I'm going to pose the same question to you from your perspective as the state medical officer.
Yeah, I would add on basically to a lot of what Drenda has said. I mean, two famous quotes that you hear in public health is "Public health saved your life today. You just don't know it." That was said by Dr. Wen when she was the commissioner in Baltimore. And another one we often say is, when public health is working well, nobody notices, because hopefully things aren't happening. We're preventing things. And public health does a really good job on that. And most people don't know what they do. In fact, the data that came out at the turn of last century was showing how much life expectancy had increased over the 100 years from 1900s to 2000. And it's 30-year increased life expectancy here in the United States, and 25 of it is estimated to due to a lot of public health interventions. So I think what's been one of the most challenging for me is not only because they're my friends, but I know the people that go into public health, people like Drenda and so many others of our local public health, and even here at our state public health that I work with. And I think people have tried and have worked the hardest they possibly can with the best interest of the community at all times. We didn't always have the best data. We had to use what information we had at that time, and we adjusted as we learned more. But the vilification and the vitriol that has been put towards many of my colleagues hurts me for two different reasons. One, to see these really good people take that abuse, and two, worrying about the next generation. We need people in these positions. We need good people in these positions, and it's going to be hard to keep those recruiting people and keeping this so much needed aspect of our community available if we can't recruit good people, if people are taking more abuse than is necessary. I think most public health people, now there was times this year that we were just so busy, but they always want to work with the community. I mean, we are a community asset, and we want to work with all these different partners. That's the way public health works best. But yeah, so I hope there'll be some lessons learned when we look back, because we always do what we call an after action plan. And there's places that we can improve, there's no doubt about it. But there's also a lot of things that we hope the community will continue to work with us. And most people do. It's just some of the most vocal people get the most attention.
Absolutely, and that has to be hurtful for sure. So we appreciate so much your honesty in explaining that for us. So now let's talk about some myths surrounding COVID vaccination. So we all hear them, right? All these myths. Talk about, is the vaccine going to make me sick? Drenda, I'm going to push it to you first.
Right. Yeah, there's some typical side effects that people are seeing. Pretty minimal, though. We are pretty in touch with the big mass vaccination clinic that's happening here in Lewis and Clark County. Very, very little as far as significant side effects. So I would anticipate those that get vaccinated are going to have a sore arm. That shot will help. It will create some tenderness in the injection site. Fatigue, maybe a real mild fever, but those are pretty typical. And Dr. Holtzman might be able to speak a little bit more to more of the details, but it's pretty mild.
So let's turn it over to Dr. Holtzman, and we don't have a whole lot of time left, but variants are important. So people are talking about variants, and talk to us about the booster and what we might see going forward.
Yeah, right now there's a lot of different variants out there. And so some of it will depend on which one becomes the dominant variants. We are seeing more, and actually have even seen cases here in Montana of the variants out of the UK already. There's concerns about and that one seems to be covered pretty good by the vaccines. It does spread faster. Then there's the ones that are coming out of the UK, out of South Africa, Brazil. All these are concerning. And I think we're going to still get your vaccine. It's going to be helpful. And we will be moving on to probably make some adjustments to the vaccines as we are necessary. A lot more detail we can go into in another time if you'd like.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much. This time goes so fast. And on behalf of Mountain Pacific, I want to thank you both for your service in public health. We appreciate it so much. Thank you. So coming up next, we're actually going to be talking to someone who's already had that vaccine, and maybe she can help shed some light on mythbusters, things we don't have to worry about. So please stay tuned. We'll be back. Welcome back to Healthy Living for Life. Stevie Tsai is joining us. Stevie is a pharmacist as well as an account manager with Mountain Pacific Quality Health. She's going to be talking to us about her experience in getting the COVID vaccine. So Stevie, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So talk to us about why you got the vaccine and how were you eligible?
I am eligible as a healthcare professional. I still practice and serve my community as a pharmacist.
And so pharmacists, obviously being considered as a healthcare worker, were able to get that vaccine. That's fantastic. So you've received both doses, so you're good to go?
I have. I got notice that I was eligible in late December, made my appointment right away, and was fully vaccinated in January, and have been free from COVID since about mid-February.
So talk to us about some side effects that you experienced as part of the vaccine. So were you sick? Talk to us about that.
Yes. So with my first shot, so I got Moderna, which is a 2-dose series. My first shot was not a big deal. My arm was a little sore for about a day. It was fine. My second shot, I had a very typical experience. About 18 hours after my vaccine, I had a low-grade fever. I needed some Tylenol. That progressed to joint pain, lots of fatigue, the worst chills I've ever experienced. I was pretty uncomfortable for about 30 hours and described it as feeling like I got hit by a bus. Thankfully, roughly 48 hours after I received that vaccine, I felt much better. Through the whole process, I kept telling myself and anyone that would listen that I was going to have so many antibodies. I knew that vaccine was working because of that strong immune response. I also got the histamine response that is common with Moderna vaccine. So I got a red, warm area on my arm a couple days after my vaccine. It took about a week for that to resolve, but my doctor knew right away what it was. I took antihistamines and nothing unexpected or strange happened to me, and I felt like it was very worth it.
You know, it's such a good point because we still have folks out there who are really hesitant to get the vaccination. And I know you're a proponent of it. Would you mind sharing some of the reasons that you really want your friends and relatives to get that vaccination?
Yeah, so many reasons to get this vaccine, right? It protects us from severe COVID. It protects, it almost eliminates your risk of hospitalization or death from COVID. It's very important to get these. It will get us out of this pandemic and will allow us to return to normal life, which we are all very ready for.
So what would you tell your best friend who says to you, I really don't want to get vaccinated? What would be your number one message? I know you went through it a bit, but on a personal note, what would you tell her?
First, I would say these are very safe. I felt really confident going in, knowing what to expect from the vaccine, knowing that it's been well studied. I felt really good about my decision to get vaccinated. And there are so many things we're missing in our life right now. For example, I didn't want to bring COVID to my grandparents, who are both over 80, who I love dearly. And so because I'm a healthcare professional, my husband is a healthcare professional, I really haven't seen them for 13 months now. And I miss that connection, that physical closeness. And getting vaccinated made me feel more confident I wouldn't bring them COVID. And it also, they were eligible right away. So now they have been vaccinated and I can hug my grandma and not worry that I am risking her life doing that. 48 hours of discomfort is so worth that. So worth that.
Absolutely. So you talked about visiting your grandparents. So what about being comfortable going out and about and having lunch with friends? Are you comfortable doing that?
It's funny that you mentioned what would I say to my best friend, because I just spent the weekend with two of my best friends who had high-risk jobs throughout the pandemic. They worked in ICUs and our local COVID floors at our hospitals, and we couldn't see each other because it was risky. And because we're all vaccinated, we had a girls' weekend and we spent time together without masks. We were able to safely eat out. The weather was beautiful, so we did do it outside. And I was telling a coworker, I feel a little bit like I have armor now. I am protected from COVID. And with new recommendations and things, I feel like I have the blessing of the CDC to go ahead and visit those people and return to some of my normal life.
So in the 30 seconds we have left, do you have any advice for me about a vaccine?
The best vaccine, the best COVID vaccine you can receive is the one available to you soonest. Don't wait to make that appointment. Feel good about that decision. This is the best thing to protect your community and your loved ones, but very much yourself.
Oh, thank you, Stevie, so much for sharing your knowledge and experience. And thank you to our viewers for joining us, and hope you'll join us again. And until then, stay fit, stay well, stay healthy for life with Healthy Living for Life. And don't forget, get vaccinated. Take care, everyone.
Healthy Living for Life is brought to you by Mountain Pacific Quality Health in partnership with AARP Montana. We'd love to hear from you. If you have suggestions for future programs, visit our website at mpqhf.org or call us at 406-443-4020. You can also catch us on YouTube by visiting our website and clicking on the Healthy Living for Life logo. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions.